Rajagachaja Stotra Satta Sri Srimad His Divine Grace Srila Bhai Charan Arvind Bhakti Vedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Charyas Divine Grace Srila Prabhupada Ki Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Segaho Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Giridhara Sri Vasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Ki Sri Sri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shamakund Radha Kund Giri Govardhana Ki Sri Vrindavan Mathura Dham Ki Sri Dwarka Dham Ki Sri Jagannath Puri Dham Ki Sri Navadvip Mayapur Dham Ki Sri Mayapur Chandradev Mandir Ki Gangamayi Jamunamayi Ki Tulsi Devi Bhakti Devi Ki Harinam Sankirtan Ki Samavata Bhakta Vrinda Ki Transcendental Book Distribution Ki Jai Shri Shri Gaurnitai Ki Jai Shri Sri Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Devi Ki Jai Shri Krishna Balaram Ki Jai Shri Giri Govardhana Ki Jai Shri Sri Radha Madhava Ki Jai Nitai Gaura Pimanande. All glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to the assembled devotees, all glories to Sri Guru, to Sri Gauranga, all glories to Sri Prabhupada. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Jena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Juta Padakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Vishakanvitam Scha Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanusuti Devi Pranamami Vanchakalpa Tribhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyaiva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Nasta Prayesha Badrishu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naistiki Idam Bhagavatam Nama Purānam Brahma Samhita Uttama Shloka Charitam Chakara Bhagavan Rishi Nishreyasaya Lokasya Dhamyam Swaschayanam Mahad Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gauda Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya Om Sri Sarabhyai Namaha Om Sri Sarabhyai Namaha Om Sri Sarabhyai Namaha Mukam karoti vasalam pangum langayate girim Yat kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Yat kripatamaham bande Sri Gurum Dinataranam Hare Krishna. Welcome everyone to the morning class. Yeah, normally on Saturday, yes, some few more devotees might be coming. We are continuing our reading from the first canto of the Srimad Bhagavatam, first canto, chapter number 4, entitled The Appearance of Sri Narada. And the text it is
26, 2:6.
2:6, yes. evam pravṛttasya sadā bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ sarvātmakenāpi yadā nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ evam pravṛttasya sadā evam pravṛttasya sadā bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ sarvātmakenāpi yadā nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ evam pravṛttasya sadā bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ sarvātmakenāpi yadā nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ evam pravṛttasya sadā bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ sarvātmakenāpi yadā nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ
evam pravṛttasya sadā bhūtānāṁ
evam pravṛttasya sadā
śreyasi dvijāḥ.
I think in some books it's all in two lines. It has to be divided properly. Evam pravṛttasya sadā.
evam pravṛttasya sadā bhūtānāṁ.
Evam pravṛttasya sadā.
evam pravṛttasya sadā
Evam pravṛttasya sadā.
bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ.
Bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ.
sarvātmakenāpi yadā.
Sarvātmakenāpi yadā.
nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ.
nātuṣyad hṛdayam tataḥ.
evaṁ pravṛttasya sadā.
Evam pravṛttasya sadā.
bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ.
Bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ.
sarvātmakenāpi yadā.
sarvātmakenāpi yadā.
nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ.
nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ.
evam pravṛttasya sadā.
Evam pravṛttasya sadā.
bhūtānāṁ śreyasi
Bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ.
sarvātmakenāpi yadā.
sarvātmakenāpi yadā.
nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ.
nātuṣyad hṛdayam tataḥ. Anyone else? Evam pravṛttasya sadā.
bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ.
Bhūtānāṁ śreyasi dvijāḥ. sarvātmakenāpi yadā. nātuṣyad dhṛdayaṁ tataḥ. Okay. Evam. Thus. Pravṛttasya. One who is engaged in.
One who is engaged in
Sadā. Always.
Bhūtānāṁ
Bhūtānāṁ. Of the living beings.
of the living beings.
Śreyasi.
Śreyasi
In the ultimate good.
in the ultimate good.
Dvijāḥ. O twice born. Sarvātmakena. Api. By all means. Yadā. When. Na. Not. Atuṣyat. Become satisfied. Excuse me. hṛdayam. Mind. Tataḥ. At that. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhakti Swami Srila Prabhupada ki. O twice born brāhmaṇas. First I'll read it, then after you can repeat. O twice born brāhmaṇas, still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Kindly repeat after me. O twice born brāhmaṇas. Still his mind was not satisfied, although he engaged himself in working for the total welfare of all people. Purport. Sri Vyasadeva was not satisfied with himself, although he had prepared literatures of Vedic value for the all-around welfare of the general mass of people. It was expected that he would be satisfied by all such activities, but ultimately he was not satisfied. I will continue reading the next verse, also text 27. Natri prasidad dhṛdayaṁ sarvātmakenā shuchau vitādakayan vivik tasta idam chovacha dharmavid. Translation to text 27. Thus the sage, being dissatisfied at heart, at once began to reflect, because he knew the essence of religion, and he said within himself, purport, the sage began to search out the cause of not being satisfied at heart. Perfection is never attained until one is satisfied at heart. This satisfaction of heart has to be searched out beyond matter. And we'll just read one more. Actually, one more means two more because they're combined together. Text 28 and 29. Dhrita vratena hi maya chandam si gurabhugnaya manita nirvyalikena grihitam chanushāsanam bharata vyapadeshena yamanayarthascha pradarshita drishyate yatra dharmadi stri shudra dibir apyuta. Translation to text 28 and 29. This is Srila Vyasadeva speaking here. I have, under strict disciplinary vows, unpretentiously worshipped the Vedas, the spiritual masters, and the altar of sacrifice. I have also abided by the rulings and have shown the import of disciplic succession through the explanation of the Mahabharata, by which even women, Shudras and others, friends of the twice born, can see the path of religion. Purport. No one can understand the import of the Vedas without having undergone a strict disciplinary vow and disciplic succession. The Vedas, spiritual masters, and a sacrificial fire must be worshipped by the desiring candidate. All these intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata for the understanding of the women class, the labor class, and the unqualified members of Brahmana, Kshatriya, and Vaishya families. In this age, the Mahabharata is more essential than the original Vedas. So we are at the junction here where Srila Vyasadeva, although he has written very extensively the Vedic literature is put into writing, culminating with the Vedanta Sutra. Vedanta Sutra is actually explaining what is the end of all knowledge, isn't it? Veda anta, Veda knowledge, the ultimate end of knowledge, which is written in codes actually, called aphorism. So, although Srila Vyasadeva had written all of these and been very regulated, followed all the prescribed rules, still somehow he was not feeling content. Of course, we will find out after a few verses why he was feeling that way, so we won't jump ahead here. Interesting point mentioned, of course, in the this last purport that we are reading regarding the Mahabharata. Prabhupada makes a very clear statement that for the people in Kali Yuga, the Mahabharata is even more important than the Vedas. You see. And we also need to understand how this is also explained by Lord Brahma himself in the Brahma Samhita. We find this verse, Advaitam Achyutam Anadim Anantarupam Adyam Puranam Purusham Navayovanam Cha Vedeshu Dolabam Adolabam Atma Bhaktao Govindam Adi Purusham Tamaham Bhajami. Vedeshu Dolabam, Vedic literatures are not so easy to understand. Not at all easy to understand. We cannot simply by our own endeavor, our own ability, our own intellectual development, understand the meaning, the inner meaning of the Vedic literatures. And one of the reasons, of course, is that the subject matter of the Vedic literatures is very vast and covers subject matters for people in different modes of material nature also. The Vedic knowledge, we were talking about this, I believe maybe yesterday, a few days back, is containing what is called knowledge of a spiritual nature that's called paravidya. The section called the Shruti. Shruti means hearing. What Lord Brahma heard from Krishna, or what Krishna revealed within the heart of Lord Brahma, means it is directly coming from Krishna. That is Shruti, hearing. That is the topmost knowledge. And the other section is called Aparavidya. Para, apara, isn't it? Para means superior, the other one inferior. Inferior we should not understand as being not important. Aparavidya has to do with the Smriti section of the Vedic literatures, which deal a lot with all kinds of material sciences and material knowledge. And that is why those who are followers of the Vedic culture, they will extract, followers of the Vedic culture will extract from these two levels of knowledge whatever they need for teaching to people in general. That's why when we look at the curriculum for Gurukula, there is a traditional, unchanging curriculum, which actually is very nice when we stop and think about it, because one who is a student in Gurukul, he will study the same books throughout his whole career, or his whole days as a student. Not that, the following year, a whole new set of books, like in modern education, because the knowledge is changing, isn't it? We discovered something, some new theory. And the old, what was considered knowledge last year or 2 years ago, is now not knowledge. We have some new knowledge, some new discovered so-called knowledge. This is not knowledge. Knowledge means actually unchanging. Knowledge means that which does not change. That is perfect knowledge. And that is why we as devotees should be very concerned about the fact that our devotee children are not getting real knowledge. And we have still yet to provide real Vedic education, what is called a Vedic education. Vedic education, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, means taking from the Shruti and the Smriti. Not everyone will become a Brahmana. And of course, not every Brahmana is simply going to learn about spiritual subject matters. There are different professions within the Varna of Brahmana, isn't it? The Brahmana Varna, usually we think Brahmana or priest, but actually that's a very limited understanding of what a Brahmana is. Definitely, priests are Brahmanas, supposed to be. But there are many other professions. For example, one who is a doctor in the Vedic culture, a Kaviraj, Ayurvedic doctor, not modern doctors, Ayurvedic doctor, he's a Brahmana. One who has studied the science of architecture, isn't it? Which also contains the science of Vastu, how to arrange your house in such a way that it is in harmony with the various subtle laws of nature that most people are not even aware of, is a great science. That's also the profession of a Brahmana. So within our ISKCON society, we should not only be training people to be one kind of Brahmana. We should understand the various needs that are there within society, especially in the context of wanting to redirect society back to what it is meant to be in terms of Vedic social order. Of course, in the beginning of the movement, Srila Prabhupada was very much concentrating on preacher Brahmanas, Brahmanas who would be on the altar, and Brahmanas who would be distributing books, who would be preaching, because that was the need. It's still there, of course, today. At the same time, when we look at the larger context, we need Brahmanas who are qualified astrologers. We need Brahmanas who are qualified Ayurvedic doctors, etc. So unless one approaches the Vedic literatures through proper guidance, there is all good possibility of getting diverted or getting lost. That's one thing. The other aspect is that the topmost knowledge, the most confidential knowledge is concealed. It is not so easy to discern, to find out. Just like I was mentioning the other day, and this is coming from the Srila Jiva Goswami's Sat Sandarbha, that the Hare Krishna Mahamantra that we know, of course, and that we chant every day, we don't find it on every page of the Bhagavatam, or we don't find it in so many places actually in the Vedic, because it's the most confidential mantra, you know. Just like we have Gayatri Mantra. Gayatri Mantra, they're also very confidential mantras, and they are meant to be given to those who actually qualify to receive such mantras. One needs to one needs to be prepared to receive actually the Vedic knowledge. We were reading that a few days back, how traditionally, until and unless one was initiated as a brāhmana, he would not start his study. The guru, traditionally the spiritual master, begins to teach the disciple after he is initiated. That means that before his initiation, a student will have to demonstrate that he is actually qualified to receive this knowledge. And this is a very interesting point also. Some people will say, well, that was the argument Srila Prabhupada was making reference to that in a few purports a few days back, that sometimes people, they misunderstand. Why isn't the Vedic knowledge available to everybody? Why can't everybody chant mantras? This is discrimination. Isn't it? People, they think like that. But actually, in the context of knowledge, and in the context of education, modern day thought is that, and this is being promoted, this is the propagation, the propaganda, modern propaganda is that everyone has a right to education. It is everyone's right, isn't it? As a matter of fact, they have laws that you have to receive education until, compulsory education, until level 10 or 11, whatever. It varies from one country to another. But actually, this is not the Vedic understanding. Knowledge, to receive knowledge, it is not a right. It is a privilege. It is a privilege. Inasmuch as bhakti, devotional service, it is not a right. One has to be, to stay in a temple, for example, it is not everybody can stay in a temple. It's not everyone's right to stay in a temple. You have to follow the 4 rules and regulations. You have to chant 16 rounds every day. You have to get up for Mangalarti. Then you can stay in the temple. I mean, that's some basic. So it's a privilege to be staying in a temple, to be practicing devotional service is a privilege. To receive knowledge is a privilege. Mother Saraswati, who is actually the goddess of learning, I'm trying to find that verse, a few verses I'm trying to find. I came across it some time back, and somehow I don't have it. But she is speaking to one brāhmana, and she is explaining how please do not give me to unqualified people. Knowledge Shastra is knowledge. Shastra. We call it the weapon of knowledge. Just like the Kshatriyas, they have their weapon that's called astra, isn't it? For cutting. So with Shastra, with the knowledge of Shastra, that also is something very powerful. If it is in the wrong hands, it can be misused. That is why knowledge is not meant to be given to anybody and everybody. That's why in the Vedic culture, those who are responsible to give knowledge means the brāhmaṇas. Brāhmaṇas, they are the teachers. Knowledge is meant to be safeguarded, meant to be protected. And those who are the most qualified to protect knowledge are those who are situated in the highest level of purity, at least in the mode of goodness. They are the guardians of knowledge, brāhmaṇas. Brāhmaṇas are meant to be the guardians of knowledge. And therefore, when we begin to understand this concept, this principle, we will see how false is present-day modern system of education. Like in the Vedic culture, it's not that the teacher will first of all test his students. So many examples are there in the Shastra. The guru is not obliged. He's not obliged to accept anybody as a disciple or student. The guru will accept someone as disciple or student if that particular individual proves himself to be qualified to receive what the guru actually can give, isn't it? So it's a very different dynamic. The dynamics between what is going on in the Vedic culture between a teacher and a student, or between guru and disciple, is very, very different than the modern day, dynamics of modern education, where there's practically no relationship at all between the teacher and the disciple. And this is, knowledge means also not only spiritual knowledge, but also material knowledge. One can misuse material knowledge. One time, one of my godbrothers, many years back, Atma-tattva Prabhu actually, who read and studied the Shastras, was very knowledgeable about so many things. He was explaining what I thought was a very interesting point, that a lot of the knowledge in the Shastra is actually hidden. It is hidden from the demons. It is hidden away from people who are not qualified, because if they discover certain things, they'll just make a whole mess of the whole world, which is what is going on now, actually. The whole ecology is in such a chaotic condition right now, because people in the name of science and in the name of advancement are going against actually the established laws of nature, isn't it? And in that conversation I had with Atma Tattva Prabhu, he was mentioning how when we look, if we're not living in Hyderabad, if we're out in the country, we can see stars at nighttime. Otherwise, in cities, you cannot see the pure, skyline. Skyline is only for people who are in villages. Of course, even in villages now, there's more and more lights coming up. But so he was mentioning, you see, the whole cosmic arrangement, all the movement of the stars. How is it that they're not, there's so many billions of stars in our universe? How is it they're not colliding with one another? And he was mentioning how it is described in the Shastra how all of these stars, they're all tied to some ropes. Now we may think, come on. Just like we hear the description of the sun god, how the sun travels. In the Bhagavatam, it explains how the sun travels actually because it is being pulled by a chariot with billions of horses. Or, stars are held by ropes. So then he explained that these are not ordinary ropes. These are air ropes. Air ropes. So many of the descriptions that are there in the Shastra, we have to see them, understand them in a particular way, not at face value. That's why anyone who reads Shastra on his own, with one's own limited, imperfect and crippled mind, will find so many faults because one is not seeing properly, not able to see properly. So coming back to the few verses we've been reading here, Srila Vyasadeva wrote all of these literatures, and then he was despondent. He was somehow not satisfied, and I think it'll come up in a few days. Within the next few days, of course, those devotees who have read the Bhagavatam already know the answer to some extent, why it is that Srila Vyasadeva, I mean, just imagine, Srila Vyasadeva is not just, an ordinary Joe Blow person, he's like a literary incarnation of Godhead. So we'll leave that for the next few days, and we'll bring this to a close unless there's some question or some comments from what we have read or from what we have heard. It's very interesting here how it says that all the intricacies of Vedic knowledge are systematically presented in the Mahabharata, so that it can be understood by even those who are generally less able to understand or less qualified to understand. Yeah.
Very question actually. When I came initially to ISKCON, I heard classes from Krishna Swami Raghava and Radheshyam Prabhu.
Yeah.
So it was a great treat. Initially, I heard almost like few hours, like 10 hours or something. Science of Self-Realization classes they gave. So continuously I heard from morning to evening. So after that what happened, I got some information and I started telling everyone. And practically I became very proud.
Became?
Very proud of.
Okay.
I don't know.
That you had acquired some knowledge.
That's right.
Yeah.
And I started misbehaving and not respecting others. And so when you said that, I was relating myself when I started, how it was and how bad it went on. And the same knowledge, even though it was so good, when it was explained or exposed in a different way, it went on in a different direction. So later, after quite a long time, I realized that's why that olden days it was given to qualified people, not to. Later, I just thought how to adapt or how to understand it in a proper way. First, knowledge with respect to having proper behavior and all these things. So how to adapt these things, qualities to understand first, and when to explain and how to explain this knowledge.
Yes. It is a natural tendency, and that is also desirable and good, that when we acquire knowledge, we have a natural tendency of wanting to share it and give it to others. At the same time, there's a way that needs to be taken up. There's a mood. There's a certain mentality, isn't it? And this comes, this ability, let's say, to deliver knowledge. It comes by, I would say, more mature levels of Krishna consciousness. We cannot just, in one purport, Srila Prabhupada uses that example, in a parrot-like manner, simply repeat knowledge that we may have received. We need to understand, the whole the concept of kala desha patra, time, place, and circumstance. Who is actually qualified to receive this knowledge, and what is also my qualification to give this knowledge or to share this knowledge. So there's a certain maturity that needs to be there, and generally maturity is something that takes some time. It takes some time to become mature in our understanding of the philosophy of Krishna consciousness. This is a common phenomena that takes place in new devotees. It's happened to all of us when we became new devotees. So that new devotees, when we first came in contact with the philosophy of wow, and then we wanted to tell and convince the whole world, beginning with our parents, and then we immediately get all kinds of resistance, and people don't understand what we understand. And we have a hard time understanding why they don't understand something so simple. So therefore, there is a kind of natural enthusiasm that is there in new converts. That's why they, in certain, like in Christianity and others, they will use newly converted people to go out preaching, because they're full of enthusiasm and conviction and whatnot. But they may not be because their understanding is still not so deep or not so profound. So this more deep understanding of the philosophy and how to deliver it, how to share it, to whom, when, is something that will come gradually as one practices Krishna consciousness, as one is connected actually with the principle that Lord Chaitanya has given also. The principle of achar and prachar, isn't it? Or in a similar instruction given by Lord Chaitanya, Janma sartak kori kora para upakar. Bharat bhumite hoila manusya janamazar janma sartak kori. First we make our lives proper. First we make our lives successful by nicely practicing Krishna consciousness, by becoming strong in our sadhana, by gradually becoming more mature in our understanding of the philosophy. And then slowly, gradually, we can para upakar, present and share that philosophy, that understanding to others. Generally, as a general principle, we should only preach or present or share things that we understand, isn't it? Yeah. Otherwise, we'll get in trouble. We can only tell someone, advise someone, please chant Hare Krishna if we are chanting Hare Krishna, isn't it? We can only preach about following the principles if we are following the principles. So Krishna is there actually to guide within the heart those who are preachers, because ultimately we should become preachers. Everyone is meant to be a preacher. As a matter of fact, Krishna explains how there is no one dearer to me than one who explains this supreme science of devotional service, isn't it? And the statement that those who think they are my devotees are not actually my devotees. Those who are devotees are my devotees. Those who are serving my devotees. Those who are taking this kind of... So yes, even with spiritual knowledge, the tendency of being proud is still there. Because pride is one of the most deep-rooted enemies that we have within the heart. And therefore, within spiritual life, spiritual activities, there are dangers one should be cautious about also. So it's always better to take guidance from senior Vaishnavas, senior devotees, in terms of what should be my engagement, or how can I utilize knowledge that I have acquired, how can I share it with others, etc. Any other? Yeah.
Maharaj, we have seen the Mahabharata war, nuclear energy was also used. It's mentioned that nuclear energy was used actually.
In the Mahabharata, nuclear weapons, yeah.
Now we see that when Lord Krishna, when he took the knowledge also, what we are left with only a very small percentage of the Vedic knowledge. But we see now again, human beings are trying to use the nuclear energy. So this knowledge is revealed again. So definitely the Lord is revealing this knowledge to the living beings. Because unless the Lord reveals it. So even in this situation, the Lord is revealing. I mean, reason why the Lord is giving this knowledge also comes to it. It becomes difficult to understand. So how you understand how the Lord reveals this knowledge even in this Kali Yuga and in such a conditioned stage that this knowledge is being revealed.
So the question is that in the Mahabharata war, we know from the description that there was knowledge of and usage as well of nuclear weapons. Brahmastra weapon was there, and so many others. And we see that in modern day society now, there's so many countries have discovered the nuclear power, and you're making the point that Krishna has revealed that to them or allowed them to come in contact with this knowledge. So how to understand that the Lord makes this knowledge available to people who are not qualified? We cannot always so easily understand Krishna's plan. Krishna has a plan. He has the master plan. He's the only one who has the master plan. And we should understand, actually on a number of occasions, Prabhupada mentioned, for example, about nuclear power, that it is in the hands of different countries. And because it is there, they're going to have to use it. And we should know that, the whole present day situation around the world has become, if we look in the context of Bhagavad Gita, that devas and the asuras, right? This is the history of mankind since time immemorial, not a new thing. So at different times, the asuric forces become more powerful. Other times, the devotees are in majority and more powerful. Right now, definitely, it's the asuras who are running the show. So we should understand this as a means to actually, there has to be some change. So there is all good probability that if Krishna is allowing unqualified people this kind of, to control and manipulate such kind of power, which has the ability to actually destroy practically the whole planet. That means everyone living on the planet. And then Krishna doesn't allow anything to happen without a purpose. And we're not always able to fully understand what is that purpose. But definitely one of the purposes in Krishna's, whatever he does, is that he wants to eventually reestablish Dharma. And in order for Dharma to be reestablished, Adharma has to be destroyed. And the scale in which we see adharma prevalent all over the world is such a massive scale, isn't it? That's some kind of massive undertaking may well be needed for that. Whether this is Krishna's plan or not, we don't know. But because that kind of potential is there, we can see that it is very much within Krishna's realm of bringing about major and massive changes within the present misdirected world that we are living in. So we should know that Krishna has a purpose. Krishna has a really tough job. He's got to fulfill everyone's desires, the good guys and the bad guys. Meantime, we as devotees, we have to endeavor to the best of our ability to preach Krishna consciousness and to introduce this Vedic knowledge, this Vedic culture, and then what will be the outcome? How the changes, some change has to come about, there's no question. Some major changes have to come about. How those changes will come about, when, Prabhupada, for example, quite some years back, when he was preaching in America, was telling how modern day, the automobile civilization has only so many years. And so, meantime, we have to just continue in our preaching endeavors and ultimately depend on Krishna. The whole situation is way beyond our tiny intelligence to figure out how these changes are meant to come about. Krishna, in one purport in the Bhagavatam, Srila Prabhupada explains the following. When this is in the section where Lord Nrsimhadev is fighting with Hiranyakashipu, and at one point Hiranyakashipu slips out of Nrsimhadev's hands, and all the demigods become. We thought he was going to be finished, and then now he's again free, and that means we're in trouble. So they became all alarmed. But in the purport, Srila Prabhupada explains how Lord Nrsimhadev may do that sometimes, let these asuras, kind of free on the loose. But we should know, Prabhupada makes the point, we should know that at any moment, with the flick of his nail, he can just finish off all of these Hiranyakashipus. And actually in that purport, Prabhupada explains how modern leaders should take note, that because they're engaged in asuric activities, at any moment, their program will be finished. At any moment. In the meantime, we have to keep chanting Hare Krishna, and preaching as much as possible. And it's ultimately in Krishna's hands how long he will let the asuras do their thing, And when he will decide, okay, that's it. That's the end of it. Game over. That day will come. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatm ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai.
His Holiness Bhakti Raghava Swami Maharaj ki jai.